Tempest in Teyvat, Rimuru's Elemental Odyssey by KabirSingh808. The demon awakens, the goddess sleeps. The harsh winds of the desert howled outside, blowing grains of sand against the stone walls of a modest house nestled at the edge of Aru village. Inside, the room was dimly lit by a few oil lamps. The air was heavy, not just from the storm outside, but from the palpable tension within. Ether and Dihaya sat side by side on a wooden bench near a small, roughly carved table. Paimon floated close to Ether's shoulder, occasionally glancing around nervously. On the other side of the table sat Alhaitham, calm and composed, his expression unreadable. Leaning against the far wall was Sino, arms crossed, his sharp eyes fixed on Alhaitham as if waiting for him to make a wrong move. The room was quiet, the only sound being the occasional whistle of the wind outside and the creaking of wood under the pressure of the storm. But that silence was broken when the door creaked open and a figure stepped in. She had tan skin and long, flowing dark blue hair with a regal yet commanding presence. Her most striking feature was her eyes, one a deep blue like the desert night, and the other a golden yellow that seemed to gleam even in the dim lighting. She carried with her a tray laden with drinks and fresh fruits, setting them gently on the table. "I'm sorry you all have to squeeze into such a small room," she said warmly, yet with an underlying firmness. "But please bear with it until the sandstorm subsides." She then straightened and placed a hand on her chest. "My name is Candace, and I serve as the guardian of Aru village." Paimon perked up. "It's nice to meet you, Candace. I'm Paimon, and this here is the traveler." She pointed to Ether with a little twirl in the air. Candace offered a gentle smile and nodded in greeting. Then, her expression shifted slightly, becoming more serious. She looked at each of them in turn before speaking again. "Now that introductions are done," she said, her tone authoritative, "let's move on to the topic at hand. As the protector of this village, I've been observing the situation from afar. Dihaya's been helping me stay informed. And now that all of you have set foot in Aru village, it is my responsibility to ensure that none of you pose a threat to our people, or to each other." Her voice sharpened as she added, "So let's keep this conversation civil. If you can't manage that, I'll have no choice but to throw you all back into the storm for some quality time with the desert." The silence that followed was thick. No one dared to reply at first, except for Paimon, who floated a little closer to Ether and whispered, "It's hard to keep calm with this kind of pressure." Candace nodded once. "Good. Now, who's going to start talking?" At her question, 3 hands lifted into the air almost simultaneously, Ether's, Alhaitham's, and Sino's. She looked at the trio and then said, "Let's start with the general Mahamatra." Sino didn't waste time. His voice was steady and resolute. "I have nothing to hide," he began. "While it's true that the other Matras aren't aware of my current whereabouts, that's because I chose to exile myself, not because I was sent on some covert mission by the Academia." Everyone turned toward him, listening intently. "A while ago," Sino continued, "I noticed discrepancies in some of the Academia's research archives. Reports didn't align with the results I was shown. I wanted to audit the data. But the moment I dug deeper, I discovered something disturbing. The one manipulating the records was none other than Grand Sage Azar himself." There was a short pause. Sino's voice lowered as he spoke with frustration. "Every lead I tried to follow was deliberately erased or hidden. I realized the sages had grown cautious of me. And when I formally requested an audit, Azar refused. He reminded me that my authority as a matra came from the sages, and that I had no right to challenge them." Candace's eyes narrowed. Dihaya folded her arms, clearly annoyed. "That was when I knew," Sino added, "that if I stayed, I'd be silenced. So I left." Alhaitham nodded in agreement. "So they really are up to no good." Dihaya leaned forward and asked, "Then why are you following him?" She pointed to Alhaitham with a curious expression. Sino turned to face Alhaitham. "I overheard something, in the Academia. The sages assigned you to investigate the group of travelers, the blue-haired one and the blonde one." Ether's expression hardened at that. Paimon gasped. "Wait, what?" Alhaitham didn't flinch. "Yes," he admitted calmly. "That's true. They tasked me with observing your group. But all I found was that you're strong and perceptive. That's all." Ether leaned in. "And did you report anything back to them?" Alhaitham shook his head. "No." "Good," Ether said, visibly relieved. Alhaitham leaned back in his chair. They offered me a glimpse of the divine knowledge capsule as incentive. I took it, but I was already suspicious of their motives. Sino interjected. An enticing offer indeed. Al-Haytham continued, but they underestimated me. I never intended to trust them. Besides, without proper safety measures, the capsule would have destroyed my mind. I think they intended for it too. So you're saying they wanted to dispose of you, Sino said, eyes narrowing. Al-Haytham gave a slow nod. Yes, you can say that. Then he looked at Ether, who had gone quiet, deep in thought. But enough about me, Al-Haytham said. I'm more curious about you. Your transformation, what was that? Sino's gaze shifted to Ether as well, sharp with curiosity. Dihaya added, yeah, you looked completely different. Candace and I both saw it. Ether's eyes lowered. That's a secret I can't reveal. Not now, he said firmly. But if we had that divine capsule from the start, it could have helped us. He looked directly at Al-Haytham, whose eyes narrowed slightly. I told you, Al-Haytham replied, it could have ruined someone's mind. Ether's voice deepened. Rimuru is different. It wouldn't have affected him. That name made everyone freeze. Dihaya frowned. Wait, now that you mention it, where is Rimuru? I thought he left for something important. Ether exhaled deeply, the weight of the truth hanging over him. He's been imprisoned by the Academia. Dihaya stood up, her voice rising. What do you mean, imprisoned? Paimon floated forward. You see, our friend Rimuru was captured. The Academia took him. Sino clenched his jaw. So they've already laid hands on your companion. Ether nodded. Yes, but a friend of his managed to get word to us. They told us to head to the desert, to get help. Al-Haytham tapped his fingers on the table. Interesting, but why? What did they need you both for? Ether shook his head. I'm not sure. But according to Rimuru's friend, two Fatui harbingers, Feldway and Dottore, are working with the Academia on something big. They've joined hands with the Fatui. Sino said, nearly spitting the words. Their minds really have rotted. Al-Haytham smirked slightly. I'm not even surprised. What are they trying to get from Rimuru? Dihaya asked. I don't know exactly, Ether admitted. They're trying to extract something from him. And judging by what little we've learned, it's nothing good. And you? Al-Haytham asked. What did they want from you? Ether hesitated for a long moment. That's the tricky part. I can't say for sure. But from what I've gathered, they were trying to manipulate my and Paimon's minds. To make us believe we were servants of something, or someone. Servants of what? Dihaya asked sharply. I don't know, Ether replied. It could be the Academia, or something far worse. But thanks to Rimuru's friend, we escaped. Sino narrowed his eyes. Who is this friend? Ether looked at each person in the room, then said calmly, someone important. Someone I can't reveal, at least not until I know who I can trust. As Ether's words settled into the air, his refusal to reveal his mysterious informant, an uncomfortable silence fell over the room. The flickering oil lamp on the center table cast dancing shadows on the walls, further deepening the tension. Everyone's gaze shifted to Ether, some with curiosity, others with caution. Al-Haytham leaned slightly forward in his seat, resting his arms on the table as he studied Ether with a piercing, calculating look. Well, he began, his voice calm but edged with a hint of underlying wariness, you're not wrong for choosing to withhold that information. Given the state of things, you can't be sure who to trust. That level of discretion is understandable. He glanced sideways at Sino. Even between us, suspicion lingers. Sino, who had remained standing with his back against the wall, arms crossed, nodded solemnly. So they're working on some grand project. That's all we have, he muttered, almost to himself. His crimson eyes flicked up to meet Ether's. But we still don't know the full scope. The Academia, the Fatui, harbingers like Dottore and Feldway, this is beyond a mere collaboration. It's something far more insidious. Ether nodded slowly. Yes, that's all I know for now. I have my suspicions, but nothing I can confirm yet. Just then, Candace stepped forward, the golden bangles on her arms jingling softly with her movement. She wore a look of firm authority, but there was also a flicker of empathy in her heterochromatic eyes. Her voice was firm but gentle. So, any more questions for now? She asked, her gaze sweeping across the room, pausing on each face in turn. No one answered. Dihaya tapped her fingers lightly against the side of her chair, lost in thought. Alhaitham seemed to be processing everything, silently weighing the risk of each new detail. Sino remained impassive, staring at a spot on the floor as if trying to piece together a puzzle in his head. Even Paimon, usually unable to stay quiet for long, hovered quietly beside Ether, her expression tense and uncharacteristically subdued. Seeing that no one spoke, Candace nodded. "Then I hope you will all act civil from now on," she said clearly, her tone brooking no argument. Her gaze landed squarely on Sino. Sino blinked, then sighed deeply. He turned his eyes toward Alhaitham, the edge of suspicion still lingering in his expression. "Though you've not yet proven your innocence, and your actions remain questionable." He paused, letting the words hang before continuing. "I will put my hostility aside for now. For the sake of cooperation." Alhaitham didn't react much, save for a subtle tilt of his head and the ghost of a smirk at the corner of his lips. "That's appreciated," he replied coolly. "Let's keep things logical." Candace gave a small smile, clearly pleased that things were at least temporarily stable. "Good," she said firmly. "We all have different roles in this strange puzzle, but remember, you're under my roof now. So long as you stay in Aru village, I expect peace, no matter how stormy things may get outside." Just as the air inside the room began to settle, the raging winds outside started to subside, softening from a violent roar to a muffled whistle. The particles of sand scraping against the house's exterior slowly faded into silence, and with a long creak, the front door gently swung open again, this time unannounced. Everyone turned their heads toward the door as an elderly man stepped inside. His robes were thick and faded from the sun, dust still clinging to the hem. His skin was weathered and tanned by the desert sun, and his back bore a slight hunch from age, yet his eyes gleamed with alertness and wisdom. In his right hand, he carried a gnarled staff adorned with cloth talismans and desert charms, gently tapping against the floor with each step. "I hope you are all well," the man greeted, his voice low but warm, filled with an air of gentle authority. Candace immediately stood and bowed her head with respect. "Ah, Uncle Anpu." He nodded at her kindly before addressing the rest of the group. "My name is Anpu. I'm the chief of Aru village. Please forgive my late arrival, I was making sure our elders and children were safe from the sandstorm." His eyes scanned the room, pausing briefly on each member. "But I see now the real storm is in this room." Each of them gave a nod in return, introducing themselves briefly out of courtesy: Ether, Paimon, Sino, Dihaya, and Alhaitham. Anpu took a seat near the far corner, close enough to listen, far enough not to impose. But everyone could tell, he was sharp, and despite his age, not much escaped his notice. With the pleasantries over, the atmosphere in the room shifted again, the tension thickening. Sino, never one to waste time, was the first to speak. "So, how are we going to save your friend?" His tone was steady, but the weight of the question hung heavy. Ether leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees as he let out a deep sigh. "I don't know." Dihaya frowned, her voice skeptical but not accusatory. "Can't you have just taken him by force when you escaped? You were inside the academia already, right?" Paimon scratched her head awkwardly, floating closer to the center of the group. Hey, I don't think that would have worked as easily as it sounds." Ether nodded solemnly. "Even with that transformation, I can't say I would have succeeded. It wasn't just about strength." Dihaya blinked. "But why? That form of yours, it looked like you could flatten the entire academia with a single blow. And honestly, the only harbinger there that's a real threat is Dottore. He's number 2, after all." Ether's expression grew serious. He lifted his head, eyes focused on Dihaya. "You're underestimating them," he said, voice low but firm. "Underestimating?" she echoed, brows furrowed. "What do you mean?" He glanced around the table, ensuring he had everyone's attention. "From what I know, Feldway is far more dangerous than Dottore." Alhaitham tilted his head slightly. "Feldway? He doesn't even have a ranking among the harbingers. How could he be more dangerous?" "That's exactly the point," Ether replied. "It's not because he's weak that he has no rank. It's because he's too strong. Beyond conventional hierarchy. Feldway doesn't belong among the numbered harbingers because he doesn't need to. I believe his strength surpasses even the current archons, individually." The air in the room grew heavy with disbelief. His intelligence, his command of unknown magic and manipulation, he's an apex predator. A being who, if he truly wanted to, could manipulate entire nations from the shadows. Even if the top 3 harbingers teamed up against him, I doubt they'd stand a chance. Even Paimon's wings drooped at the weight of that statement. Dihaya leaned back, arms crossed, brows furrowed deeply. That's concerning. Sino tapped his foot slowly against the floor. Yes, very concerning. But then where did they even find someone like that? As soon as the question left his lips, every pair of eyes turned toward Ether and Paimon. Paimon gave a nervous chuckle as sweat rolled down her temple. Ah. Ether, however, remained calm, as though he had anticipated this moment. His golden eyes reflected the flicker of the oil lamp, stoic and unwavering. Alhaitham leaned forward slightly, narrowing his gaze. I think we deserve an explanation. Judging by Paimon's expression, you do know where he came from. Sino added, and if what you say about his power is true, then it's not a matter of curiosity. We need to know. Because if we don't understand who or what we're up against, we'll be swallowed whole before we even realize it. Ether inhaled deeply and slowly. Then he nodded. You're right, he said. You all deserve to know. The group leaned in, listening with increasing attentiveness as Ether began to recount what Rimuru had told him, of a conflict far beyond their world. He spoke of a battle between 3 beings, Rimuru, Ivaraj, and Feldway, entities from another dimension entirely. Of how the clash of their powers ripped through space itself, tearing through worlds and sending them into Teyvat. Of Feldway's ambitions, manipulations, and cunning, and how he'd aligned himself with the Fatui and the Academia, operating from the shadows while everyone else was unaware. As the story unfolded, the oil lamp flickered, casting longer shadows in the corners of the room. No one spoke. Even the air itself seemed to pause as they absorbed every detail. When Ether finally finished, the silence was suffocating. I think I understand why you're wary of him now, Dihaya said at last, her voice hushed, almost reverent. Alhaitham nodded slowly. Indeed. For someone like Feldway to be walking among us, unseen, manipulating our institutions, it's a terrifying thought. Sino's gaze was intense, and his tone grim. It sounds like we're not just fighting against corruption or politics anymore. This is far beyond anything we've prepared for. If what you've said is accurate, defeating them might be impossible. Ether looked up, shaking his head. Not entirely impossible. I can handle Feldway in combat, maybe even Dottore if I push myself, but beyond that, I can't promise anything. And remember, when I was captured, I was alone. If I had tried anything, and failed, it wouldn't have just been my end. It would have been over for Rimuru. For everyone. Candace placed a hand on her hip, nodding slowly. Then you made the right choice. Escaping was not weakness, it was survival. If they had taken you too, I don't think even with all of us together, we could have won. Alhaitham and Sino shared a look before both nodded in quiet agreement. We need a plan, Sino muttered. And fast, Alhaitham added. Before they move on to the next stage of their so-called project. As the weight of Ether's revelation still lingered in the air, he sat up straighter, voice steady but firm. We need information, anything and everything we can get. Every lead, every detail. And more importantly, we need allies. People strong enough to take on others while I deal with Feldway and Dottore myself. Sino gave a slow, deliberate nod. His expression was as unreadable as ever, but there was a shift in his eyes, one that hinted at focus. Resolve. You're right. But the question is, where do we find such allies? People strong enough, and willing, to stand against enemies of that caliber. From the side of the room, where he had been quietly observing with folded hands, Anpu, the village chief, cleared his throat. The elderly man leaned forward with quiet gravity, speaking not just with authority, but with the cautious tone of someone who knew the weight of secrets. That is, indeed concerning, Anpu said. But if it's leads you seek, then there may be one worth pursuing. You should look into the village keepers. The room subtly shifted again at the mention of the name. Dihaya raised an eyebrow, arms crossed. Now that you say it, I haven't seen any of them around since I returned to the village. Candace nodded solemnly, folding her arms across her chest. That's exactly the point. They've gone missing. All of them. And from the little information we've been able to gather, the Academia may be behind it. Paimon, hovering slightly higher now, blinked and asked, wait, what are village keepers exactly? Sino answered with a calm, practiced tone, as if he'd recited it many times before. They're what the villagers call the mad scholars, those who lost their sanity after prolonged training in the Avidya forest. They were exiled here to the desert for their own safety, and perhaps the Academia's convenience. They were always odd, Candace added. But harmless, often muttering to themselves, wandering aimlessly, but recently, even that presence has vanished. Quietly, one by one. Ether's jaw tightened as he stood. Then we need to find them. If the Academia really is behind this, then those scholars may hold key knowledge, maybe something about the project they're hiding. The sooner, the better, Sino said, nodding again. Time is not our ally. He stepped toward the door, looking at the others. Let's split up. Ask the villagers. Any scrap of information, no matter how small, could help us. Everyone gave a quick nod and left the house, disappearing into different paths of the village under the now calm desert sky. The storm had passed, but the golden sands were still stirred from earlier. The faint scent of scorched earth and dust lingered in the air as villagers slowly began emerging from shelter, returning to their routines with cautious glances. Ether and Paimon took the southern part of the village. House to house, they spoke with families, merchants, and guards. Most gave only vague answers. Some didn't want to talk. Others hadn't seen the scholars in days, some in weeks. And yet, no one had noticed when the disappearances began. It's like they just vanished into the air. Paimon whispered as they stepped away from another fruitless conversation. Ether rubbed the back of his neck, sighing. They were already ignored. Forgotten by most. No one even noticed them leaving until they were gone. It was then that Paimon pointed toward the central square. Hey, look, isn't that Alhaitham? Indeed, just near the village chief's house, Alhaitham stood beneath the shade of a woven awning, arms crossed, eyes scanning the surroundings like he had been waiting for someone. Ether and Paimon approached quickly. Paimon, as usual, spoke first with a teasing edge. Hey, are you slacking off over here? You do know we're supposed to be working, right? Alhaitham gave a slow side glance, not bothering to turn his body fully. I'm not slacking off. I already completed my investigation. Ether raised an eyebrow. That fast? Alhaitham adjusted his gloves slightly, his tone flat but with the slightest edge of interest. Efficiency is not the same as haste. And I found something interesting. That immediately caught Ether's attention. He stepped closer, eyes narrowing. And what did you find? There's a girl in the village, Alhaitham replied, now fully facing them. She might know more than she lets on. About the mad scholars. About the disappearances. She mentioned something strange during a routine conversation, something about voices at night. Voices, Paimon echoed. That sounds super creepy. And suspicious, Ether added. Alhaitham nodded once. She's not from the Academia, nor affiliated with any guard. Just a local girl who tends to the sick and elderly. But she's observant. She's been hearing voices. Then let's talk to her, Ether said, already taking a step forward. Alhaitham gave a small gesture with his hand. Follow me. She usually spends her afternoons behind the healer's hut, near the date trees. Without another word, the three of them moved, weaving through the still sandy paths of the village. The sun was beginning to dip toward the horizon, casting the dunes in long shadows and bathing the clay houses in a warm, orange glow. As they neared the back of the healer's hut, they could hear the rustle of leaves, and the soft murmuring of someone humming a song. Sitting beneath the trees, carefully drying herbs on a woven mat, was a young woman with dark hair tied in a loose bun, her hands gentle but swift. When she noticed them approaching, she stood slowly, brushing the dust off her dress. Her eyes held a subtle caution, but not fear. You're not from around here, she said simply. No, Ether replied, but we heard you might know something about the people who've gone missing. The ones you call village keepers. The girl looked at them for a moment before stepping forward, her voice quiet but firm. My name is Shani. I've lived here my whole life, and I don't say these things lightly. Alhaitham nodded. Tell them what you told me. You have my word, they're here to help, not harm. Shani glanced at Ether and Paimon, then at Alhaitham again, as if measuring his sincerity. After a beat, she said, yes. What I said is true. I've heard screaming, out in the desert, usually past midnight. Faint, but unmistakable. Desperate. Ether's eyes narrowed slightly, alert. And, where did the screams come from? Shani hesitated. There's an old Eliezer hospital nearby. Abandoned for years. From what I can hear, the sounds always come from that direction. Alhaitham folded his arms. I confirmed it. One of the guards I questioned admitted he's also heard strange noises from that area at night. But no one dares go near it anymore, not after it fell into disrepair. Ether's expression hardened with quiet resolve. Then we don't have time to waste. Let's go. Paimon floated closer to Shani and gave a sincere little nod. Thank you. Seriously, you helped us a lot. Ether added with a calm sincerity, we won't forget this. You've done more than you know. Shani nodded, her eyes lingering on them with a mix of hope and worry. Be careful. There's something wrong in that place. As the group set off, the sun dipped below the dunes, casting long shadows across the sands. The sky above began to fade into twilight, painting hues of orange, purple, and deepening indigo across the horizon. The desert wind was cooler now, carrying the lingering scent of heat-baked earth and dried herbs. The abandoned hospital loomed ahead, tucked against a rocky rise. Its outer structure was crumbling, walls stained with age, half-collapsed archways gaping like broken mouths. Wooden beams jutted from cracked stone like bones through torn flesh. It looked as though even a single blow could bring the whole structure tumbling down. This place looks like it's one good sneeze away from collapsing. Paimon muttered. Be that as it may, Alhaitham replied, cool and collected, we're here for a reason. The trio waited quietly, blending into the shadows, the eerie silence of the desert settling around them like a blanket. Minutes stretched on. The sky turned darker. Then, faint sound of someone crying started to come from the hospital. Ether snapped his head toward the sound. It was faint, but unmistakable, a voice. A cry. You hear that? Paimon whispered, eyes wide. Someone's crying. It's real, Alhaitham confirmed. Looks like Shani was right. Let's go. Ether nodded, already moving. They carefully made their way into the ruins, stepping over collapsed doorways and shattered tiles. The air was thick with dust and the scent of old decay. Each step echoed through the hollow corridors, dust trailing behind their feet. The crying continued, sometimes fading, sometimes returning louder than before. Wait. Paimon whispered nervously. Is it really okay to just go in like this? What if it's a trap? Ether turned to her with a reassuring smile. Don't worry. If anything happens, I'll protect you. Paimon hovered closer. Okay, I trust you. But let's be extra careful. They followed the sound through the winding, ruined halls until they reached a wide room. It should have been the end of the line. The walls were solid. The room was empty. No one there. But, the crying. Paimon floated in a slow circle. It's coming from here. I'm sure of it. Alhaitham knelt down, scanning the ground. He brushed away layers of sand and debris, revealing a faint seam, an outline of a hidden hatch. Looks like this is it. He pressed a mechanism hidden beneath a broken tile. A dull clunk echoed, and a hatch creaked open, revealing a dimly lit tunnel descending below. A secret vault, Ether mused. More like a hidden laboratory, Alhaitham said as he descended. They entered cautiously, the greenish light of eerie candles casting long shadows across the narrow stone hallway. The air was colder here, damp and strangely sterile. Scrolls and half-rotted books lined ancient, dust-covered shelves. Some were marked with the seal of the Academia. Others bore strange, sigil-like patterns etched in ink that shimmered faintly in the green glow. As they reached the heart of the vault, they found him. Curled up in the corner, mumbling incoherently, was a man wearing Academia scholar robes. He rocked slowly, his hands gripping his head, muttering phrases that made no sense, fragments of broken logic and symbols of dreams. Ether stepped forward carefully. Who is? Wait. Alhaitham's eyes widened slightly. That's Razak. You know him? Paimon asked. Alhaitham nodded slowly. Yes. He was my senior at the Academia. Brilliant researcher. Specializing in memory structure and neural pattern interpretation. He vanished during one of his late-stage field projects. Ether knelt to inspect Razak, but then he glanced around and frowned. There are signs of retreat here. Footprints, fresh. Someone was here, a group. Looks like they left recently. They cleared out in a hurry. Paimon gasped. Then they knew we were coming. But how? Alhaitham stood, brow furrowed. They left everything they couldn't carry. But they took the other scholars, and whoever else they had down here. He walked toward one of the open scrolls on the table, skimming through it. His eyes darkened slightly. This was no normal research. They were extracting knowledge from the mad scholars. More specifically, the fragments of forbidden knowledge they accessed when in contact with Erminsul. Wait, Ether said, brows furrowed. So, that's what's turning them mad. The forbidden knowledge. Alhaitham nodded. Yes. And someone realized they could harvest that madness. Use it. Weaponize it. He gestured to some diagrams on the wall, crude renderings of memory trees and neural maps twisted by darkness. And it doesn't stop there, Alhaitham continued. From what I can piece together, the Academia also spread the rumors of King Deshret's resurrection. They're manipulating the Eremites, radicalizing them. Also the rest of Sumeru is distracted, divided, while they carry out these experiments in secret. Ether stood still, processing it all. Which means, someone's feeding them intel. Someone knew we were coming. Paimon gulped. You think there's a traitor among us? Not necessarily, Alhaitham said. He looked down at Razak, still murmuring nonsense. For now, let's take him back to the village. He needs help. And we need more answers than we're going to get here. Ether stared at the ruined scrolls and glowing candles one last time, a chill creeping up his spine. Yeah, we're not done yet. Not even close. Together, the three of them lifted Razak, supporting him between them as they exited the vault. The cool desert air hit them like a bomb after the oppressive atmosphere inside. The stars had come out, glittering across the blackened sky as they made their way back to Aru village, their minds weighed heavy with everything they had uncovered. By the time Ether, Alhaitham, and Paimon returned to Aru village, the moon was high in the sky, casting a silver glow over the adobe rooftops and narrow sand-worn paths. The soft whisper of wind through palm leaves filled the quiet village, only interrupted by the sound of hurried footsteps as they approached the main house where their companions were gathered. Inside, they found Dihaya standing tall and confident, her arms crossed and her expression sharp. Behind her, two bound men knelt on the floor, bruised and looking thoroughly interrogated. Candace stood nearby, her spear resting beside her, observing them with a quiet vigilance. You're back, Dihaya said, glancing over her shoulder. Good timing. We've had our own development here. Sino stepped forward. Dihaya caught these two lurking near the western edge of the village. They're her old contacts from a mercenary band. One of the men groaned, muttering under his breath before Dihaya gave him a sharp tap to the shoulder with the hilt of her blade. He winced. Fine, fine. We admit it. We were paid off, all right. Paid off to do what? Ether asked, stepping closer. To lure the mad scholars, those you call village keepers, out of the village, the man admitted. We'd talk to them, offer them food, led them out under the guise of a walk, then hand them over to someone else. Who? Paimon asked, aghast. The man's voice trembled slightly. A masked guy. Never showed his face. Called himself, an envoy of King Deshret. Said he was sent to guide the chosen ones to their awakening. A tense silence fell across the room. King Deshret envoy. Alhaitham repeated, voice low and thoughtful. A false prophet, another pawn in the Academia's scheme. They took the scholars away, Candace added grimly. To where, they refused to say. Or, perhaps they genuinely don't know. Either way, it lines up with what we found, Ether said, turning to the group. He motioned toward the door. From outside, a tired Razak was carefully helped in by Alhaitham and Paimon. The scholar looked frail and disoriented, mumbling fragmented phrases under his breath as his eyes darted around the room without focus. His Academia robes were frayed, and faint marks on his arms hinted at the experiments he had endured. Everyone's gaze turned somber. This is Razak, Alhaitham began. He was a senior scholar, my senior. We found him hidden beneath the ruins of the old Eliezer hospital. The place had been converted into a secret vault, a laboratory, really. They were conducting experiments on the scholars who lost their minds after interacting with Erminsul. They were extracting knowledge, Ether added. Trying to tap into the forbidden information that drove these people mad. The rest of them, they were gone when we got there. Only Razak was left. They knew we were coming, Alhaitham said. They cleared out just in time. Someone tipped them off. The group fell into silence once again as the weight of the situation settled in. Then Sino's voice cut through the quiet, cold and sharp. Are you implying someone here betrayed us? Alhaitham didn't flinch. I'm implying someone unwittingly betrayed us. Sino's crimson eyes narrowed. Choose your words carefully, scribe. Alhaitham folded his arms, his gaze steady and unblinking. I will. But the logic speaks for itself. You're the General Mahamitra. No one in the Academia is more scrutinized, more predictable, or more tracked than you. The Akasha has your patterns, your patrol routes, your methodologies. And every Janagarbha day, when new knowledge is uploaded into the Akasha, your information becomes part of its data stream. He paused, letting the implication settle. With the Akasha's processing capabilities, it wouldn't be difficult for them to simulate and predict your next moves. They don't need a spy, they already have you. Every action you take informs their next step. Paimon's mouth fell open. Wait, so you're saying Sino's not a mole, but the Academia is using him like one without him knowing? Alhaitham nodded. Exactly. Dihaya leaned back, brow furrowed. You know, that does make a disturbing amount of sense. The sages are many things, but stupid isn't one of them. Sino let out a long, slow breath. So that's how they're doing it. He looked down at the floor, brows furrowed in thought, then rose to his feet. Then I think I know where they could have taken the village keepers. The room snapped to attention. Alhaitham's eyes flicked to Sino. Naturally. The most logical place to hide something is where your opponent won't go. Ether's gaze sharpened. The opposite of where the General Mahamitra would focus his attention. The desert, Sino and Alhaitham said in unison. The events involving the Eremites and the formation of their alliance proceed the same as in the original game storyline. To maintain the pacing and focus on new developments unique to this version of the story, I've chosen to skip over those scenes. And one more thing, Ether, after their alliance with the Eremites and Ramon, the leader of the Eremites, he told everyone that the friend that helped him escape is none other than Lesser Lord Kusanali. Please assume all key events occurred as in the game unless stated otherwise. The dim flicker of candlelight danced along the sandstone walls of the village chief's home, casting long shadows across the floor where the final meeting of allies had just taken place. Everyone present, Ether, Paimon, Alhaitham, Sino, Dihaya, and Ramon, the leader of the Eremites, stood or sat in focused silence, reviewing the final strategy they were about to risk their lives on. Ether leaned forward over the table, golden eyes gleaming with determination. It's simple, he began, voice steady despite the weight of what he was proposing. Leave Feldway and Dottore to me. I'll handle them, hold them off as long as I can. You all focus on finding Lesser Lord Kusanali and Rimuru. Once Rimuru is free, he'll help me. Together, we can take them down. A beat of silence followed his words. Even the flickering flame seemed to pause, as if the entire room were holding its breath. Sino folded his arms, his expression unreadable beneath the brim of his headpiece. That's a good plan, but it's reckless. There's no guarantee you'll be able to hold back two monsters like them. Ether's expression didn't waver. You just have to trust me. Alhaitham, ever the observer, tapped his fingers lightly against the table. If he says he can do it, then leave it to him. Ether hasn't let us down yet, and this time won't be any different. Sino let out a slow breath, then gave a nod. Very well. I'll trust your strength, just this once. He turned to the others. Ramon and his people will handle the sages, Azar, and the Matra, create enough of a diversion to stop them from interfering. Meanwhile, Dihaya, Alhaitham, and I will infiltrate the heart of the Academia and find the Lesser Lord, and your friend Rimuru. Ether nodded, satisfied. Perfect. Once Rimuru is free, he'll help turn the tide. I'll do everything I can to buy you the time you need. The group stood in unison, the atmosphere thick with anticipation and resolve. As they stepped outside the chief's house, the desert winds had calmed for the night. Candace stood at the entrance, her gaze strong and steady. Whatever happens, return safely, she said, looking at each one of them in turn. They all nodded silently. Scene shift, inside the Academia, experimentation room. A sterile coldness hung in the air, thicker than the silence. The room was dimly lit by sickly green lights embedded into the walls, casting eerie shadows across the floor and machinery. Strange runes pulsed faintly across the floors, etched with ancient, corrupted knowledge. Rimuru hung in the center of the room, bound by shimmering shackles that looked more magical than mechanical. His once radiant blue hair was matted and tangled, stained dirt. Bruises and cuts marked his arms and face, the result of days of brutal experimentation. Standing before him, Feldway lifted a hand, a dark mist curling around his fingers as he pressed his palm near Rimuru's chest, scanning him with twisted curiosity. Dottore, calm and eerily silent, observed from the side, his expression unreadable. Feldway finally pulled his hand back with a sneer. "Why don't you just hand over your manas already?" His voice was taunting, almost playful. Rimuru didn't answer at first, his head bowed low, barely conscious. Feldway clicked his tongue and took a step closer. "Hey, I'm talking to you." A whisper, barely audible, slipped from Rimuru's chapped lips. "Get lost." Feldway's eyes narrowed. The playful tone vanished. "Still so stubborn. Haven't you realized? You've lost. If you accept that now, I'll end your suffering quickly." With immense effort, Rimuru lifted his head. His dulled eyes flickered with the last embers of defiance. "Shut up. I'm not giving up. I still have hope." Feldway's lip curled. "Hope." He turned to a nearby console and pressed a button on a sleek, obsidian device. A metallic hiss echoed through the room as a concealed door slid open. "Then let me destroy that hope for you." From the doorway, two shadowed figures stepped forward, obscured by the dim light and mist. Rimuru's eyes widened slightly, the most emotion he'd shown in hours. He tried to lean forward, straining against his restraints. Feldway smirked. "You see. That's why they are here. What do you think now, hero? Still believe your friends will save you?" Rimuru stared at the two figures in silence, then smiled weakly. "Just you wait. I know he'll find a way." Feldway's smile vanished. His eyes darkened. "Looks like you still need more education." He snapped his fingers, and glowing glyphs ignited around Rimuru's chains, pulsing with increased energy. Scene: Aru village, night before the infiltration. A gentle desert wind rustled the fabric curtains of the dimly lit room Ether had been given. The low flicker of a lantern painted soft shadows against the earthen walls. He stood quietly by a wooden table, tightening the straps on his sword and checking the small gear he had. His face was calm, but his golden eyes burned with resolve. "Rimuru. Nahida. Just hold on a little longer," he whispered. Behind him, Paimon fluttered with a slight frown, pacing in circles midair. This is so tense. Paimon can't believe we're actually doing this. What if Feldway is stronger than we thought? Before Ether could answer, the door creaked open. Alhaitham stepped inside, calm as always, but with purpose in his stride. In his hand, a familiar device shimmered softly in the lamplight, an Akasha terminal, though it looked slightly bulkier than usual and emitted a soft, emerald glow from its core. Paimon turned quickly. Alhaitham, what are you doing here? And what's that in your hand?" Alhaitham walked forward and handed the device to Ether. "It's a modified Akasha terminal," he explained. "With help from two scholars Raman's group caught, we managed to isolate it from the central network with the help of the elemental orb Rimuru gave you. It won't get tracked by the Academia or overridden by their signal jammers." He tapped the side. "Through this, we can establish direct communication with each other. We'll be able to coordinate and send updates on the fly." Paimon blinked. "Oh, so it's like a smartphone." Alhaitham raised an eyebrow. "A what? Smartphone?" Paimon repeated, then puffed her cheeks. "Rimuru told us all about them. He said in his world, people used smartphones to talk to each other even if they were really far away. Kinda like a portable Akasha." Alhaitham's eyes lit with curiosity. "Fascinating. Another convenience of his world. Once this mission is over, I'd like to speak with your friend Rimuru. He seems like someone with valuable insights into alternate technology." Ether gave a small smile. "You can talk to him once we bring him and Nahida back." Alhaitham gave a short nod. "Just remember, if anything goes wrong, use this to inform us immediately. From what you told us about Feldway, he won't make the same mistake twice. Once you escape him, he'll become more cautious. Any tactic we use from that point forward might be useless if we don't catch him off guard." Ether's eyes narrowed. "Which is why we hit them fast and hard." Alhaitham crossed his arms. "Exactly. You just need to transform again, show your true strength. Go directly for the sanctuary and engage both Feldway and Dottore. Keep them occupied. We'll do the rest. free the prisoners, find Rimuru, and protect Nahida. Just then, the door opened again. Sino and Dihaya entered. Sino adjusted the clasp of his cloak. Preparations are complete. We've distributed weapons and Akasha terminals to the others. They're standing by. Dihaya gave a confident smirk. Looks like we're all set. Let's go. The group stepped out into the cool desert night. Outside, waiting for them near the edge of the village, stood Candace, her spear in hand and her expression solemn but proud. She looked at them one by one. Listen, no matter what happens in there, your safety comes first. If the mission fails, if things get out of control, fall back. Don't throw your lives away. We still need people like you to fight another day. They nodded in silence, understanding the weight of her words. Ether's gaze drifted upward, toward the stars. We won't fail. Scene shift. Forest near Rimuru city, just before dawn. The trees grew denser as Ether and Paimon made their quiet approach. Unlike the open sands, the forest near Rimuru city was alive with the sounds of crickets and the occasional rustle of small animals. The canopy overhead was thick, casting dancing shadows across the moss-covered ground. They approached a large tree with sturdy branches. Ether leapt up with practiced grace, finding a spot high above to perch. Paimon hovered beside him, her tiny hands wringing nervously. Below them, nestled just beyond the tree line, the towering outline of Rimuru city glowed faintly with light. The upper spires of the Academia's sanctuary pierced through the misty dawn, and somewhere within that sacred building, Rimuru and Nahida remained imprisoned. Paimon's stomach is doing flips, she muttered. Everything's so quiet. It's too quiet. Ether remained calm, golden eyes fixed on the sanctuary ahead. The wind stirred his hair as he leaned against the tree trunk. Don't worry. His voice was steady, unwavering. We've made it this far. Everyone's counting on each other. And we're not alone anymore. The view from the tree branch gave a clear sight of the outer wall of the sanctuary. Tiny figures moved along the battlements, Fatui operatives, cloaked guards, and masked sages. The whole place was fortified. Paimon's voice trembled. Do you think Rimuru and Nahida are okay? Ether's eyes hardened slightly. They're strong. But even the strong need help sometimes. He slowly reached into his cloak and pulled out the modified Akasha terminal. It hummed faintly in his hand, waiting. We'll bring them back. He clenched it tightly. No matter what it takes. The wind shifted. In the distance, a sharp gleam of light reflected off the sanctuary dome. Dawn was breaking. The soft hum of the modified Akasha terminal echoed faintly in the silent air, glowing with a pulsing emerald hue. Ether, perched near the shattered tree where he had taken cover earlier, tapped the device on his ear. A familiar calm voice filtered through. Alhaitham. Everything is going according to plan. Just wait for my signal. When I tell you, transform and attack the sanctuary. Understood. Ether's golden eyes focused on the glowing spires of the Academia in the distance. Understood, he said firmly. Good. We'll move on your signal. Don't do anything reckless until then. Alhaitham's voice faded as the link ended. Ether lowered his hand and turned to Paimon, who was still nervously hovering behind him. Paimon, he said gently, but firmly, I need you to hide. What? No. I'm coming with you. She immediately protested, crossing her arms in defiance. We've come this far together, what if something happens to you? Ether's expression darkened. His voice lowered with emotion. That's exactly why I need you to stay safe. After what happened to Rimuru, I can't lose you too. Paimon faltered, her small face filled with worry. She wanted to argue more, but before she could say anything. Rumble. The earth beneath them began to tremble, at first faint, like the echo of distant thunder, then violently, as if something enormous were pushing its way through the world below. Trees groaned. Leaves scattered. The air itself seemed to pulse. Ether's instincts kicked in. He immediately leapt from his perch on the branch, landing on a lower branch just as it cracked apart. Massive chunks of debris exploded upward from the forest floor as the ground below shattered like glass, sending roots, earth, and trees flying into the air. He used a tumbling slab of stone as a stepping point, flipping through the chaos and landing at a safe distance with a practiced roll. Ether. Paimon called, catching up mid-air. What's going on? What was that? The Akasha terminal pulsed again. Traveler, report. What just happened? Alhaitham's voice rang through, sharper now. The ground just exploded. Something's rising out of it, I'm okay, but. As the dust cleared, the world fell silent, all sound sucked into a vacuum of awe and horror. From the ruptured land, something monstrous began to ascend, its sheer size casting a long shadow across the forest canopy. It was a titanic, mechanical giant, at least twice the height of the shogun's puppet form, constructed of intricate metal plating and humming with arcane, artificial energy. 4 massive arms, each adorned with bladed fingers and charged canisters, rotated with terrifying precision. Its central core glowed crimson beneath layers of protective shielding. Its entire design mimicked the elegance of Raiden Shogun's final form, but this was all machine. Atop the metallic colossus's crown, 2 figures stood, small, but unmistakable. Feldway, with his commanding presence and an air of divine arrogance. Beside him, Dottore, smiling like a man who had achieved perfection. Aether's eyes narrowed, locking onto them. Paimon's voice trembled. They were building that under the Academia this whole time. What is that thing? Aether didn't answer. He reached into his satchel and drew out the sword Rimuru had gifted him. Its blade shimmered with runes, and its hilt held 2 empty slots. He then pulled out 2 blue spheres, swirling with the power of crystallized energy. Scene shift. Hidden caves near Sumeru's city, Alhatham's position. In a quiet, concealed ridge near the city's outer wall, Alhatham, Sino, Dihaya, and a few members of Raman's rebel group were positioned. They had been preparing to breach the outer perimeter when the tremor hit. Now, they stood frozen, watching the skyline lit with a red glow and the silhouette of the mechanical god rising just beyond the trees. Sino's eyes widened. What is that? Dihaya muttered under her breath. That's no mere weapon. That's a challenge to the gods themselves. The air felt heavy. Even the experienced warriors and sages among them stared with disbelief. Alhatham, ever the quickest to regain composure, activated his Akasha terminal. Traveler, respond. Where are you right now? Aether's voice came through, steady but charged with determination. I'm standing right in front of it. Alhatham took a deep breath. Do you think you can handle it? There was silence for a moment. Then. I'll do it. Aether's voice was clear, sure, resolute. Go find Nahida and Rimuru. I'll hold them off. Alhatham paused, then nodded, even though Aether couldn't see him. Understood. We'll handle the rest. He turned to the others. Change of plan. We infiltrate now. While Traveler draws all attention, we get inside and free the prisoners. Get to Lesser Lord Kusanali. Get to Rimuru. Move. They nodded, adrenaline surging as they disappeared towards the shadows of the sanctuary's entrances. Now the scene shifted as we see the sun had not yet crested the horizon, but the world was already alight with tension. Amidst the shattered terrain, Aether stood defiant before the towering mechanical colossus. The forest behind him had been reduced to rubble, and the earth trembled beneath his feet as the titanic machine hummed with energy. Suddenly, with a soft hiss of hydraulics and shifting metal, the face of the robot slowly opened, folding outward like petals. Inside the mechanical shell was a circular cockpit chamber, glowing with an eerie violet light and pulsing circuits. Within it was a figure, short, yet radiating malice and presence. Indigo hair, sharp eyes lined with crimson, and adorned in dark garb interwoven with elegant bells and red-threaded ornaments. A translucent black veil drifted behind him. Scaramouche, the 6th of the Fatui Harbingers, leaned forward with a scowl. Hey, get off my head. He glared up at Feldway and Dottore, who had been standing atop the robot. With theatrical ease, the two leapt from the colossal head and landed gracefully before Aether, the ground cracking slightly beneath their feet. Feldway's smirk was as cold as the void. You should have run when you had the chance. Now that you're here, it just makes it easier for us to deal with you. Aether's sword pulsed in his hand. His expression remained still. You think too highly of yourselves. Feldway let out a low chuckle. Oh, I'm very aware of my strength. The only thing you should worry about now is staying alive. Aether closed his eyes. For a breathless second, the world stood still. Then he whispered, "Let's start." He raised Rimuru's sword. 2 ocean blue spheres clicked into place in the hilt's twin sockets. Immediately, the blade flared with power. Aether's body began to transform, but this time, it was unlike anything seen before. His body arched backward as a surge of dark energy exploded from him. Black wings, massive and feathered, tinged with shadowy aura, erupted from his back, stretching wide and casting long shadows. A pitch-black crown formed atop his head, elegant yet ominous, pulsing with chaotic resonance. Paimon, witnessing this, began sweating bullets. Oh no! He's coming back, that maniac is coming back. With a terrified squeak, she zoomed behind a rock, cautiously peeking out. The transformation wasn't over. Ether's body grew, more muscular, more primal. His skin darkened slightly as black, vein-like strips formed across his chest and arms, glowing with a shifting liquid darkness. His golden eyes turned pitch black, with crimson pupils glowing like burning coals. He threw back his head and roared, a sound filled with chaotic glee and overwhelming bloodlust. I'm back. After so long. A grin twisted across his face, wild, unhinged, ecstatic. He pointed his sword at the three figures before him. So you're my opponents. Huh. First that Electro woman, and now this. Three at once. This is the best thing ever. Feldway's smirk faltered slightly, while Dottore brows furrowed. Dottore. What's wrong with him? Feldway, eyes narrowing. I suspect, he has fragments of Rimuru's soul fully integrated with his own. That sword acts as a medium. When he draws from it, he likely channels aspects of Rimuru's essence. He turned toward Dottore. Rimuru's soul was a fusion of countless beings. If his essence is mixing with the traveler's, it may create unpredictable results, even multiple personalities. Dottore laughed darkly. Fascinating. I must dissect him, assuming he survives. Scaramouche, from the cockpit, rolled his eyes. Are you two done? Because he's not waiting. Ether blurred forward, the wind screaming in his wake. His blade cleaved through air, sending a shockwave so powerful it uprooted nearby trees. Feldway responded instantly, summoning a radiant sword of white-blue light, arc. HMPH. Typical demon. You remind me of that bastard Noir. Their blades clashed, a clash so thunderous that the ground cracked, and the shockwave bent the trees in every direction. Dottore summoned a mechanical sphere and hurled it. It burst into a tangle of cables, trying to ensnare Ether, but he twisted, wings shielding his body before slashing the device in half. Above, the robot's massive hands moved. Scaramouche activated the core. The Colossus raised one arm and fired a concentrated energy beam. Ether took to the sky in an instant, flying straight through the beam with his blade extended, aiming straight for Scaramouche's cockpit. The Harbinger grinned. TCH, you're fast. Let's see how fast you are inside. Scene shift. Inner Sanctuary, the rescue of Nahida. Within the massive inner chamber of the sanctuary, Alhaitham, Sino, Dihaya, and Raman's group had just broken through the defense lines. The interior was massive, vaulted ceilings, golden circuitry, and floating crystalline devices humming softly. At the center floated a giant green orb, suspended in midair like an artificial womb. Inside it, curled gently, was Nahida, eyes closed, arms gently crossed over her chest. Her small form glowed with dendro light, but the barrier that encased her was unnatural, synthetic, laced with Fatui tech. Sino's eyes widened. Is that Lesser Lord Kusanali? Alhaitham nodded, voice cold. The description matches what the traveler told us. That's her. They've imprisoned her. Dihaya's fists clenched. So the rumors were true, so they have really gone this low. Disgusting. Sino stepped forward, voice shaking with fury. They'll pay. Every single one of them. Alhaitham extended his arm. First, we free her. Then we bring down the entire network. Move. They sprinted toward the orb. Crack. A whip of flame lashed out of the shadows, aimed straight at Dihaya. She only had time to widen her eyes. But Sino moved like lightning, his spear intercepting the flame, sparks flying as the two forces collided in a flash of heat and light. Alhaitham's eyes narrowed. We're not alone. Prepare yourselves. From the shadows stepped a woman with an elegant stride, lips curved into a familiar smirk. Her presence alone made the temperature spike unnaturally. La Señora. How touching. Come to play hero. She mocked, flame gathering around her fingertips. Let's see how long your resolve lasts. Behind her, Fatui soldiers began flooding in from all directions, standard units, skirmishers, even some enhanced with mechanical augments. They surrounded the group like vultures. Señora raised her hand, fire spiraling into a scorching spear of flame. This is where your journey ends. Let me give you a warm welcome to your last day.